Welcome back. When we think of street photography, the classic image that often comes to mind is a candid snapshot of urban life, taken up close with a wide-angle lens. However, breaking away from the norm and using a telephoto lens such as the 90mm can offer a unique and compelling perspective on street scenes. I decided to explore how using this 90mm lens would change my approach to street photography, allowing me to capture scenes with a fresh eye. The choice of a 90mm lens in street photography might initially seem counterintuitive. Traditionally, street photographers have preferred wider lenses that allowed them to immerse themselves in the action. However, a 90mm lens brings several distinct advantages, and I started experimenting with some of these even while I was on the train. Firstly, compression. A 90mm lens tends to compress space, making elements in the frame appear closer together than they actually are. This can create a dramatic effect, particularly in busy urban environments where the background and foreground can interact in intriguing ways. Secondly, the increasingly shallow depth of field provided by a longer lens helps isolate subjects from the background, making them stand out more prominently. This is particularly useful in busy street scenes where you might want to highlight specific actions or emotions, say. And thirdly, discretion. Using that longer lens allows photographers to maintain a distance from their subjects, something which might particularly appeal to beginner street photographers. It can be advantageous for capturing candid moments without disturbing the natural dynamics of a scene. There are some technical considerations to take into account in order to make the most of a 90mm lens. Firstly, aperture settings. A wider aperture, so a lower f number, so on this 35mm lens I can go to f2, but you may be able to go to f1.8, f1.4. A lower f number will provide a shallower depth of field, helping to isolate your subjects. This is ideal for creating portraits or detailed shots of objects within a street scene, but it does make focusing even more crucial and will force you to slow down. Secondly, shutter speed. To avoid camera shake, which can be more pronounced at longer focal lengths, use a faster shutter speed. A good rule of thumb is to use a shutter speed at least as fast as the reciprocal focal length of the lens. So for a 90mm lens, that means at least 1/90th of a second. For a 50mm lens, at least 1/50th of a second, and so on. And then finally, ISO settings. Depending on the lighting conditions, you might need to adjust the ISO to balance your shutter speed and aperture settings, especially if shooting in lower light conditions to maintain image sharpness. So, I swapped out my usual lens and grabbed the 90mm. In this case, this excellent Voigtlander f2.8 for the Leica M rangefinder cameras. Compared to other lenses, and this is the Fuji X-T90, an excellent lens, but you can see hugely different in size. Compared to other lenses, this still has a small format, which helps, but even if you have a monster 90mm lens, and they do come bigger than this, I definitely recommend giving it a go. Apologies in advance, the sound is not as good as it should have been. I forgot the usual microphone and had to go with the GoPro only, which struggled a bit in the busyness of Piccadilly Circus.
Escalators are moving machinery, so to avoid any injuries, please take care when using them.
So I've got this little patch of light here, just playing around with the reflections on the right hand side and the shadows, but also the harsh contrast with the light. Piccadilly Circus, bright sunlight,
And it's going to be a bit of a challenge today. As you can probably hear, I left the microphone cable behind, so we're going with GoPro sound. The other challenge is I'm shooting with the 90mm lens, which is what I've limited myself to. It's not my usual go-to, it's not my 28, and I've already missed quite a few shots because you can't really shoot from the hip with a 90mm lens. It's going to force me through choice to be more abstract and to be a lot slower in what I'm shooting. And coming off the tube just now, there were so many tempting shots down there that if I'd had the 28 on me, I'd probably have 20 or 30 shots in the bag by now, and maybe one or two decent ones. So today's going to be quite a challenge for me. That's always a good thing. This spot here has some great framing going on through this scaffolding, and I also like the sign we've got in here, the Kodak sign. A lot of red is coming through, so possibly something here, maybe something deep in these frames here, we'll see. Street photography does get you doing some crazy things sometimes, and I'm finding myself very focused on this little tiny shape of red here and letting this little bit of background fall into just a soft focus really. So it's really just about this geometric shape and maybe the colour. But I'm also noticed there's a little bit of street sweeping going on here, which could be a nice little detail. So with this focal length, a lot of it is going to be about shooting through frames. So I've got this little frame of this hot dog place, and with the 90 it's really in tight on the frame, looking to see who might come in. And we've got this guy cleaning it at the moment. Spot here with the two flags and zone focusing through the other side, so the flags should blow out and whatever walks through should be sharp. So I'm messing around with the frame up here, right in there. It's a long way away on the GoPro lens, but can get in pretty well on the camera.
Hello, it's me.
And there's a dude in a hat that keeps going by. He'd make a great silhouette. So it's pretty challenging, the 90mm. It's a gorgeous day, so I don't mind being out. And I've spent a lot of time hardly going anywhere, working on frames and shooting through flags or sides of people's heads. I've absolutely no idea whether I've got anything of quality, but it is just a stunning, beautiful May day in Piccadilly Circus. Be a cool frame here. See what walks into it and walks through it. Nice contrast. If I can get some isolated figures, that's the winner. So we've got this scene here with the fantastic stripe lighting, and check at the far end on his phone. I don't know what you can see in the camera, but
is quite nicely isolated. I need the car to move away really, and ideally all the other people. But that's quite a nice little silhouette. I know he's on his phone and people hate photographs of people on their phones. I don't. I'm sure 50 years ago people hated photographs of people with newspapers because that was a way of absorbing them and losing their anonymity, or giving them anonymity. But I don't mind phones because they're the newspapers of today, and I think in years to come people will look back and say it's amazing that people actually spent their time glued to those things when whatever comes next comes along.
So I found this empty shop. Fantastic light and a little bit of a square frame just in here with the 90. Could be interesting. So lovely Sunday morning out on Piccadilly, but it's Sunday lunchtime. Time to get back on the train, head home and see what I've managed to catch today.
After a day out on the street, I always like to pick a few images to print out, and I've printed these on A4. Not sure how many of them really are keepers, but I think they demonstrate the 90mm lens quite well. I'll begin with this one. So this image was taken pretty early on in my morning's shoot. The golden light was still very much evident, and it was helped by the colours and tones in the stone and the steps at Piccadilly Circus Underground. You've got a natural man-made. You've got a frame here made by the shape of the doorway, the exit, and here you've got the woman's figure moving through it, repeated nicely in the mirrored sides of the shiny stone on the right hand side. With a 28mm lens, I probably wouldn't have got that. They would have been further apart and I would have had to be a whole lot closer. I'm quite a long way back, as you probably saw in the GoPro footage, in order to get this image. But I love the details in the paving down here. You can see all the little dots in the texture. The golden light still reflected through, and you've got this lovely golden lamp above as well, and the name Shaftesbury Avenue there for the exit just gives some context as to where we are. I also like the anonymity of this image, and the fact that she's wearing all black, which is a nice contrast with this shadow up here as well. Well, it's not a contrast, it's a repeat of this shadow up here, which I think is probably somebody else who's just moved through the exit. So yeah, a nice way to start off. Secondly, some details. I said how the 90mm lens is good at picking out details, and here I've isolated the figure of the street sweeper and his broom. He remains anonymous, we can't see his head, it was a he. I like the blue in his trousers and how that complements nicely with a little bit of orange in his jacket and the yellowy orange of the street furniture here. There's also quite a lot of goldeny orange colours in the stone, but also from the light of the time of day. And I like the shadows. So you've got the traffic lights here, you've got the awning which featured so much in the video and in shots, and this is me, I think. This is my reflection holding the camera, taking the photograph. So yeah, it's an image I like. And then here is that awning. This is a kind of abstract shot as well, because really the only part that is sharp is the corner of the awning here and this shape here and the lettering in reverse. I think it said tickets here, but you know, with it being reversed, it becomes abstract. This being the only sharp part, everything else has fallen into softness. So we've got this soft frame here of the side of the traffic light pole, which is closer than the awning, but is out of focus. and then everything fades into the distance. Really the only identifiable figure here is this person on a bicycle, and I love the fact that it's out of focus. We cannot tell who it is. I always love a bicycle in a shot because geometrically it's very, very pleasing. You've got the two circles of the wheels. You can't even really see the details of the bicycle. It's clearly a bike, and we can tell that from the way he's positioned and what he's doing. So I just think this demonstrates the 90mm really well, that you can have something really close up and sharp, yet fall off with a soft focus into the distance. And of course the opposite is also true, as this image shows, because here everything close to is soft, out of focus, and here we've got a frame, an out of focus frame, leading the eye into the sharpest part of the image, which is the subject here, this chap who is possibly getting onto the back of the bus or just moving around as the bus pulls off. And a little bit of colour. It's predominantly red, white, black, with a little bit here of green, yellows, blues in the sign. But yeah, this demonstrates the opposite way of using the depth of field available with a 90mm lens. And then moving on from that, here's the image I took in Jermyn Street. This demonstrates how you can focus on a frame. If you think back to the video of Jermyn Street, this was just a small part of what the GoPro showed in its wide angle, but the 90mm lens on the Leica here allowed me to really zoom in on this rectangle of light. Everything else is much darker, although you can see reflections here of the building and traffic lights, and here you've got 2 or 3 people crossing the road. But it's this bit that catches the eye. It's a shame really that this van was there. Perhaps something a little bit more exciting happening in the square, in the rectangle, would have been better. But it does demonstrate how you can use framing and the benefits of a 90mm lens, or the advantages of a 90mm lens, to get something like this. This image didn't appear in the video because I didn't have the GoPro on at the time, but with a few minutes to kill before my train, always happy to use those minutes to take some street photos. I went up onto the upper level at the station and shot through some glass. I don't think it was frosted glass, but it certainly impacted on the visibility, made the whole image softer. But I like the colours here. You've got the orange in the lady's dress, the blues in his shirt, which complement each other well, some reds. But predominantly a light summery feel to the image. Again, as you saw from the video, it was a really lovely bright sunny day, and that golden light percolated through everything. So I like the softness, I like the summery feel of this image. I guess if I'm really fussy, I would have liked him to be perhaps here and maybe her to be perhaps a little lower down and there. But I don't mind that. It's, you know, it's as it was, and that's as it should be. And finally, this one, I do like this, and I think it would work well in black and white as well. I like the softness and the low contrast in this. I like the fact that our main figure here is completely isolated, as in there's no overlap between him and anybody else in what is clearly a busy scene. We've got evidence of 1, 2, 3, 4 other people moving in and out of the scene. He's standing stock still, leaning on his suitcase, checking his phone, listening to his music, waiting for his train. And you've also got the triangle of the elements of the floor here, which I think work quite nicely in the scene compositionally. I think compositionally it's quite strong because of the isolated elements of all the other people and him in the middle. It probably would have worked too if this was a completely empty scene apart from him. But I just think it gives a nice sense of time because everything else is rushing around and moving around, and he is so still. So those were the images I came up with on the day. A really good morning's street shooting, and I hope a good example of what the 90mm lens is capable of. Embracing a 90mm lens for street photography not only challenges street photography norms, but it also expands your creative boundaries. Yes, it requires a different set of techniques and a bit of practice to master, but the results can be uniquely rewarding, bringing a new dimension to your street photography portfolio. So, next time you head out, consider reaching for that 90mm lens and see how it changes your view of the streets. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe. It does make a difference, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.